If you've ever wondered why Tywin Lannister was so terrifyingly effective as a leader, the answer lies in a book written over 500 years ago. Niccolò Machiavelli's The Prince is basically a manual for how to gain and keep power, and Tywin Lannister followed it like it was his personal Bible. Let me show you exactly how the most feared man in Westeros became the walking embodiment of Machiavellian philosophy, and why his methods worked so damn well until they didn't. It's better to be feared than loved. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should prefer to be feared rather than loved if he cannot be both. He argued that fear is more reliable because people are fickle and will abandon you when times get tough, but fear keeps them in line. Tywin understood this on a molecular level. When he was just a young man, his father Tytos was known as the laughingstock of Westeros. Tytos was kind, generous, and beloved by his small folk. He was also completely disrespected. Vassals borrowed money and never paid it back. The Rains and Tarbecks openly defied him. His own bannermen mocked him to his face. Tywin watched his father's kindness get repaid with contempt, and he learned the most important lesson of his life. So when he came to power, he did something that would echo through history for generations. House Rain refused to pay their debts and thought they could challenge Lannister authority. Tywin's response was absolute and brutal. He diverted a stream into the Rain's underground castle at Castamere and drowned every single member of their house. Men, women, children, everyone. Then he did the same to House Tarbeck. He didn't just defeat them in battle, he erased them from existence. The song, The Rains of Castamere, became a haunting reminder of what happens when you cross Tywin Lannister. From that moment on, nobody questioned Lannister power. Nobody refused to pay their debts. Nobody laughed. In the show, we see this philosophy play out during the Red Wedding. Tywin orchestrates the murder of Robb Stark, his mother Catelyn, and thousands of northern soldiers at a wedding feast. It violated every sacred law of hospitality in Westeros. It was dishonorable, cruel, and shocking. But as Tywin himself explained, he killed a dozen people at dinner rather than thousands on the battlefield. The Northern Rebellion ended instantly. The Freys and Boltons fell in line. Everyone else got the message loud and clear. Machiavelli would have absolutely approved. Use controlled cruelty to prevent greater violence. One dramatic act of terror that saves lives in the long run. Tywin wasn't loved, but he was feared, and that fear brought a kind of peace. Here's where it gets interesting. Machiavelli argued that a ruler should appear to have all the virtuous qualities like mercy, faith, integrity, and kindness, but he should be willing to abandon them the second they become inconvenient. People judge by appearances, so maintain the appearance of virtue while doing whatever is necessary to maintain power. Tywin was a master of this double game. Publicly, he positioned himself as the hand of the king, the loyal servant of the crown, the man who kept the realm together. He talked endlessly about legacy, duty, and the importance of family. He presented himself as the responsible adult in a world of foolish children. But behind closed doors, Tywin was ruthless and calculating. He ordered the murder of infant Targaryen children during Robert's rebellion. When Gregor Clegane presented the bodies of Rhaegar's wife Elia and her children wrapped in Lannister cloaks, it was a brutal statement. Tywin wanted everyone to know the Lannisters had secured Robert's throne, but he never publicly admitted ordering the killings. He maintained plausible deniability while reaping the benefits. In the books, there's a brilliant moment where Tyrion realizes his father's hypocrisy. Tywin constantly preached about family honor and the Lannister name, yet he put his own mistress in his dead wife's bed. He condemned Tyrion for visiting brothels while secretly keeping a prostitute himself. The man who claimed to value honor above all else broke his own rules whenever convenient. Machiavelli wrote that it's not necessary to have all the virtuous qualities, but it's essential to appear to have them. Tywin wore respectability like armor while playing the game as dirty as anyone in Westeros. Machiavelli advised rulers to choose their ministers wisely and to keep competent people around them. A prince is judged by the quality of the men who serve him. But he also warned never to trust anyone completely and to always keep people dependent on you. Tywin built an incredibly effective power structure. He surrounded himself with capable people like Kevan Lannister, his loyal brother who handled administrative details. He used Tyrion's intelligence for tasks that required cunning, even though he despised his youngest son. He kept Jaime close as the ultimate military asset and symbol of Lannister martial prowess. But notice how Tywin always maintained control. He never let anyone become powerful enough to challenge him. When Jaime joined the Kingsguard, Tywin was furious because it removed his heir from the line of succession. That wasn't about love or family tradition. It was about power and control. Tywin needed Jaime positioned where Tywin wanted him, not where Jaime chose to be. In the show, we see how Tywin manipulates Cersei and Tyrion by arranging marriages without their consent. He tells Cersei she'll marry Loras Tyrell and Tyrion will marry Sansa Stark. When they protest, his response is cold and final. Their personal happiness means nothing compared to strategic alliances that strengthen House Lannister. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. Use people according to their talents, keep them dependent on your favor, and never let personal feelings interfere with strategic decisions. Tywin treated his own children like chess pieces because that's what effective rulers do. This is one of Machiavelli's most controversial teachings. He wrote that if you must use cruelty, do it all at once and be done with it. Don't drag it out. People forget injuries quickly if they're not constantly renewed. But benefits should be given out slowly over time so people appreciate them more. The destruction of houses Rain and Tarbeck perfectly demonstrates this principle. Tywin didn't engage in a long drawn-out conflict. He didn't imprison the lords and slowly punish them. He wiped them out in one brutal stroke. The cruelty was absolute, immediate, and then it was over. The lesson was learned. Life went on. And for the next 40 years, the Westerlands were the most stable and loyal region under Lannister control. Contrast this with other rulers in the series. Joffrey enjoyed cruelty for its own sake, constantly inflicting random violence that created enemies everywhere. Ramsay Bolton's sadism served no strategic purpose and eventually led to his downfall. But Tywin's cruelty always had a purpose. It was calculated, controlled, and effective. In the books, when Tyrion asks his father about the brutal sack of King's Landing, Tywin doesn't show remorse or make excuses. He explains it as a necessary demonstration. The Lannisters needed to prove their loyalty to Robert Baratheon beyond any doubt. The sack was horrific, but it accomplished its political objective. Then it ended, and Tywin moved on to rebuilding relationships and governing. Machiavelli understood that people have short memories for violence if it's followed by stability and prosperity. Tywin gave the realm order, and most people were willing to forgive how he achieved it. Machiavelli compared fortune to a raging river that destroys everything in its path. But he said that prudent men build dikes and barriers during calm times to control the flood when it comes. A successful prince must be both bold and prepared. Tywin was always planning, always preparing. When Robert's rebellion broke out, he didn't immediately choose sides. He waited, watched, and preserved his strength. Only when the outcome became clear did he strike decisively, sacking King's Landing and presenting Robert with dead Targaryen children. It was bold and brutal, but the timing was perfect. During the War of the Five Kings, Tywin showed this same combination of patience and decisiveness. He didn't chase Robb Stark into the north where the terrain favored the enemy. Instead, he held the Riverlands, bled the northern army through attrition, and waited for the right opportunity. When the Tyrells offered an alliance, he seized it immediately. When Walder Frey and Roose Bolton showed willingness to betray Robb, Tywin orchestrated the Red Wedding. In the show, there's a scene where Tywin is skinning a deer while lecturing Jaime about legacy and responsibility. The symbolism is heavy-handed but effective. Tywin is literally and figuratively dissecting his enemies, breaking them down systematically. He doesn't rely on luck or hope. He creates his own fortune through preparation and calculated risk. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is the arbiter of half our actions, but we control the other half through our own ability. Tywin maximized what he could control and positioned himself to exploit whatever fortune brought. This is probably the most famous Machiavellian principle, though Machiavelli never used that exact phrase. His argument was simpler and more brutal. In judging the actions of rulers, look at the results. If a prince maintains his state, the means will always be judged honorable. Tywin lived by this completely. He ordered the murder of children, betrayed sacred guest right, lied, manipulated, and broke every rule of honor when necessary. But he would argue that he saved thousands of lives by ending wars quickly. He brought stability to the realm. He elevated House Lannister from a mocked and weakening house to the most powerful family in Westeros. When Tyrion confronts him about the Red Wedding in the books, Tywin's response is characteristically blunt. He explains that the alternative was continuing a war that was devastating the Riverlands, draining the royal treasury, and killing thousands. The Red Wedding was distasteful but effective. The realm needed peace, and Tywin delivered it in the most efficient way possible. This is pure Machiavellian thinking. Morality is a luxury that rulers cannot afford. The measure of success is not whether you followed the rules but whether you achieved your objectives and maintained power. But here's where Machiavelli and Tywin both encountered the same problem. Machiavelli warned that even the most skillful prince cannot control everything. Sometimes the things you do to gain power create the conditions for your destruction. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the importance of securing your succession and maintaining your house after you're gone. A truly successful prince creates a system that survives him. This is where Tywin's entire philosophy collapsed. For all his talk about legacy and family, Tywin failed at the most basic task of any dynasty builder. He didn't prepare functional heirs. Jaime was a skilled warrior but politically naive and uninterested in ruling. Cersei was ambitious but reckless and paranoid. Tyrion was brilliant but Tywin's contempt prevented him from using his youngest son effectively. In the books, it's even more explicit. Tywin's sister Jenna tells Jaime that Tyrion is actually Tywin's true son, the one who inherited his father's cunning and ruthlessness. But Tywin's hatred of Tyrion for causing his wife's death blinded him to this reality. He wasted his best political mind on spite and resentment. Machiavelli would identify this as Tywin's fatal flaw. He let personal emotion override strategic thinking. The man who treated everyone else as chess pieces couldn't see his own children clearly. He abused and humiliated Tyrion to the point where his own son murdered him. And that murder is deeply symbolic. Tywin dies on a privy, shot by his dwarf son with a crossbow, because of a prostitute. The man who built his entire reputation on dignity and control died in the most undignified way possible. All his careful planning, all his strategic brilliance, and he ended up murdered by his own child because he couldn't control his contempt. Within months of Tywin's death, everything he built began to collapse. Cersei's paranoia and incompetence destroyed the Lannister alliances. The Faith militant rose up. The Tyrells turned against them. Jaime was off trying to find honor instead of protecting family interests. By the end of the series, House Lannister was effectively extinct. Machiavelli wrote The Prince partially to explore how states fall apart. One of his key insights was that systems built entirely on one person's ability collapse when that person dies. Tywin created a power structure that depended completely on his personal authority and skill. He didn't build institutions or prepare successors. When he died, there was nobody capable of replacing him. So what can we learn from Tywin Lannister's rise and fall? Machiavellian principles are incredibly effective for gaining and holding power in the short term. Fear works better than love. Appearing virtuous while acting ruthlessly gives you maximum flexibility. Strategic cruelty can prevent greater violence. Preparation and boldness together create opportunity. Results matter more than methods. But Machiavelli also understood something Tywin forgot. Power isn't just about controlling others. It's about creating something that lasts beyond your own life. The greatest rulers build systems, not just personal authority. They prepare successors, not just heirs. They understand that legacy isn't about what you accomplish but what survives after you're gone. Tywin Lannister was the most Machiavellian character in Game of Thrones. He followed the prince like a textbook and achieved extraordinary success. But in the end, he failed the ultimate Machiavellian test. He didn't secure the future. He built a house of cards that looked impressive while he was alive but collapsed the moment he died. The rains of Castamere destroyed House Rain and made House Lannister feared throughout Westeros. But in the end, the rains fell on Casterly Rock too. Tywin's legacy wasn't the strong eternal house he imagined. It was ruin, death, and extinction. That's the real lesson Machiavelli tried to teach. Power without wisdom is just tyranny. Control without succession is just temporary domination. Fear without respect eventually becomes resentment. And a ruler who treats his own family as tools will eventually be destroyed by the very people he should have trusted most. If you found this analysis interesting, hit that subscribe button because we're diving deep into the political philosophy behind your favorite shows and characters. Drop a comment and let me know which character you want analyzed next. Should we talk about Littlefinger's manipulation tactics or Varys's intelligence networks? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, share it with your Game of Thrones loving friends. Let's get this to 10 million views and show everyone that fantasy isn't just entertainment, it's a masterclass in power, politics, and human nature.